You know what's funny? Right now, as you're watching this, there's probably someone in your life who thinks you're a loser. Maybe it's a relative who brings up your career at family dinners with that specific tone of concern that's really just disguised disappointment. Maybe it's an old classmate scrolling through your social media, silently tallying up all the ways you haven't measured up. Maybe it's that voice in your own head at 2 a.m., the one that whispers you're falling behind while everyone else figures it out. And here's the thing nobody wants to admit. They might be right. By their standards, by society's ridiculous checklist of what makes a life worthy, you might actually be losing. But what if I told you that's not the devastating truth you think it is? What if the label loser is just a story we've been telling ourselves? And like all stories, we can choose whether or not to believe it. Let me take you back to something weird. The word loser used to mean exactly what it sounds like, someone who lost. That's it. You played a game, you didn't win, you were the loser. Simple, clean, no moral judgment attached. But somewhere along the way, we took this innocent word and turned it into a weapon. Now it's not just about losing a game, it's about losing at life itself. Your career isn't impressive enough? Loser. Still single at 30? Loser. Living with your parents? Driving an old car? Working a job that doesn't make you jump out of bed with passion? Loser, loser. We've created this invisible caste system where success is narrowly defined, and anyone outside those definitions becomes untouchable. It's like India's historical caste system, but we pretend it doesn't exist because we're modern and enlightened. Except we're not. We've just gotten better at hiding it behind polite smiles and passive-aggressive comments. I was talking to my friend Sarah last month. She's 32, works as a librarian, lives in a small apartment with her cat, and by most people's standards, she's not winning. No husband, no kids, no six-figure salary, no Instagram-worthy vacations. And her mom, God bless her, cannot let it go. Every phone call is a minefield of, so any updates on the dating front, and your cousin Jessica just bought her second house. Sarah told me she feels like she's constantly apologizing for her existence. Like her life needs a disclaimer. Sorry I'm not more impressive. But here's where it gets interesting. Sarah is genuinely happy. She loves her job. She's read more books than most people will in a lifetime. She volunteers at an animal shelter on weekends. She has deep friendships. She sleeps well at night. By every measure that actually matters to her quality of life, she's winning. But society looks at her and sees failure. So who's right? This is where we need to talk about something that's going to make some people uncomfortable. Most of what determines whether you're labeled a winner or loser has absolutely nothing to do with your choices. I know. We live in a world that's obsessed with the idea that you can manifest your destiny, that hard work always pays off, that anyone can be anything if they just want it badly enough. It's a comforting lie because it means the world is fair and people get what they deserve. But there's actual scientific research on this, and it turns out luck is way more important than we want to admit. There was this study done by Italian researchers who simulated thousands of careers over 40 years. They found that the most successful people weren't the most talented. They were usually just slightly above average in talent, but they had the most luck. Meanwhile, incredibly talented people often ended up with mediocre outcomes simply because they encountered more obstacles and fewer opportunities. Think about it. You didn't choose where you were born, who your parents were, what your genetics gave you, how your brain is wired, whether you'd be conventionally attractive, what economic circumstances you'd grow up in. You didn't choose the decade you'd be coming of age in, whether the job market would be booming or crashing, whether a global pandemic would derail your plans. You didn't choose most of the things that shaped who you are and what opportunities came your way. But we've built this entire moral framework around the idea that your circumstances reflect your character. If you're struggling, you must be lazy. If you're successful, you must be hardworking. It's convenient for the winners because it means they deserve everything they have. And it's devastating for everyone else because it means they deserve their suffering. Arthur Schopenhauer, this wonderfully grumpy German philosopher, had something to say about this. He basically argued that caring what other people think about you is one of the stupidest wastes of human energy. He watched people destroy themselves trying to impress others, trying to live up to arbitrary standards set by people whose opinions shouldn't matter at all. And he concluded that most human misery comes from this desperate need for external validation. Schopenhauer wasn't exactly a cheerful guy. He was kind of a pessimist, but he was right about this. We give other people so much power over our sense of self-worth. We let their definitions of success become our definitions. We internalize their judgments until we can't tell the difference between what we actually want and what we think we're supposed to want. Here's something wild. The definition of loser changes depending on who you ask. In some circles, you're a loser if you're not making 6 figures by 25. In other circles, you're a loser if you sold out and work a corporate job instead of following your passion. You're a loser if you're single, but also if you settled. You're a loser if you don't have kids, but also if you had them too young. You're a loser if you're not ambitious enough, but also if you're too focused on your career. You literally cannot win because the game is rigged and the rules keep changing. So what do you do with this information? How do you live in a world that's determined to sort everyone into winners and losers when you know the whole system is fundamentally broken? You become what I call a happy loser. And before you think that sounds depressing, hear me out. A happy loser is someone who understands that society's opinion of them as a failure doesn't mean there's actually anything wrong with them. It's someone who's figured out that the label is arbitrary, often cruel, and ultimately powerless unless you give it power. Being a happy loser means you've stopped playing a game you never wanted to play in the first place. It means you've rejected the narrow, often toxic definitions of success that get shoved down our throats from birth. It means you've decided that your life belongs to you, not to your parents' expectations, or your high school reunion, or the Instagram algorithm, or whoever else thinks they get a vote. I'm not saying become complacent or stop trying to improve your life. I'm saying stop letting other people define what improvement means. Stop measuring your worth by metrics that were designed to make you feel inadequate, so you'd keep consuming, keep competing, keep running on the hamster wheel. There's this beautiful freedom that comes when you genuinely stop caring about being impressive. When you realize that the person judging you for your choices is probably miserable in ways you can't see. When you understand that most of what looks like success on the outside is anxiety and debt and quiet desperation on the inside. The happy loser knows something that the ambitious striver doesn't. There is no finish line. There's no level of success that finally makes you good enough, impressive enough, worthy enough. The goalpost keeps moving. The comparison never ends. You can have everything society says you should want and still feel empty because you're living someone else's definition of a good life. So here's my question for you, and I want you to really sit with this. What would your life look like if you genuinely didn't care what anyone thought? Not in a rebellious middle finger to the world kind of way, but in a peaceful, centered, this is my life, and I get to define what matters kind of way. What would you do differently? What would you stop doing? What would you start doing? Who would you be if you weren't performing for an invisible audience all the time? Because that's the thing about being a happy loser. It's not about giving up. It's about giving up on a game that was designed for you to lose. It's about recognizing that the people calling you a loser are usually just projecting their own fears and insecurities onto you. It's about understanding that you're going to die someday, and none of this will matter. So you might as well spend the time you have doing things that actually bring you joy, instead of things that look good to people you don't even like. Maybe you are a loser by society's standards. Maybe you'll never have the career or the house or the relationship status or the body or the lifestyle that's supposed to prove you made it. And maybe, just maybe, that's completely fine. Maybe the real losers are the ones who sacrificed everything that actually mattered, chasing after things that don't, who got to the top of a ladder and realized it was leaning against the wrong wall. So yeah, be a loser. Be a happy one. Define your own version of winning. Live a life that makes sense to you, even if it looks like failure to everyone else. Because at the end of the day, you're the only one who has to live in your head, in your skin, in your specific experience of being alive. And if you're at peace with yourself, if you're content with your choices, if you're living according to your own values instead of someone else's blueprint, then congratulations. You've already won the only game that actually matters, the one where you get to decide what winning means.